I think for every marketer, every entrepreneur, every creator, anyone in business today should be looking at ways that they can augment themselves across things even outside of marketing with AI tools. If you're using ChatGPT, if you're using Claude, Perplexity, if you're using any of these tools, they are a great way to augment yourself.
Hello, and welcome back to the third session. This is the third episode, and we are going to talk about content, PR, and how to amplify, and what are the challenges that AI represent for this great field of marketing. Our guests today are going to be two super great experts. I don't have words to define them. And they are also friends of mine. And let's welcome Lexi Mills and Ross Simmonds. Lexi Mills, if you don't know it, she is a part of it, a wonderful person, a human being. Is also the CEO of Shift6 Studios. It's right if I call it a boutique agency.
Yes, boutique, and we focus largely on reputation. So it straddles PR, SEO, because it's hard to define these two things today.
Yeah, totally. And Ross, you are the CEO of Foundation Marketing, and for 6 months now, we had a growth of a new startup called Distribution.ai, which is really fitting with what we are going to talk today.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So when it comes to content in their relation with SEO, there is always some sort of, let's call it, difficult relationship sometimes. Mostly because for many years, content has been considered and by SEO as a mean for achieving visibility, not as a mean for a brand to be visible for what they should be visible and to amplify their mission, their services, their products, and so on, and substantially their brands. This also led to a very awful use of content substantially. And this also, in connection then to PR, as a synonym of link building, of creation of very classic, really poor quality action in campaigns. And yes, in the recent year, actually not so recent because it's already 10 years, but the word digital PR, for instance, is in the word of everybody. Link building has transformed the best case of link building into digital PR. And digital PR, unfortunately, in the worst side, was also it was just another name of link building because, yes, it's true that it's always sold as something that is meant to make a brand more visible where it has to be visible. But at the end of the day, it's the big links. They are always there. It's true. But now maybe things are changing from, let's say, 16 months now. Things are slowly changing also in the terms of content marketing and AI and PR and AI. Why? And this is substantially the question that I'm launching to you, because we see that the SERPs less and less are driving clicks immediately. So the content is there, is feeding the SERPs, but it's more something like a visibility stuff, not a traffic stuff. And we also see that content is ingested by the LLMs, and we also know that with plenty of data that LLMs don't drive too much traffic. It's more, again, visibility. Do you think that this consideration of mine, this reflection of mine is correct or not? Who want to start first?
Lexi, I'll let you start it off.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, I think we are seeing a big change in what I would call discovery and human interaction with digital. But I don't think it means a drastic change in how we operate, how we execute, maybe. So for the first part, I think, yes, how you optimize in Google does actually influence how you optimize in LLMs. And so we see those correlations. We've got several sandbox sites. So we've been testing this for a while, figuring out how does an LLM know who you are, who a client is, what their products are. And with a lot of the rich content, a lot of that is around keeping people within the search window. So when we consider Google as a business, what are they going to need in the present? What are they going to need in the future? I think this evolution of the search real estate that humans interact with could have been easily anticipated. And the way you occupy that space, I think we need to think about it more as a shop window. We clean up our shop windows. If you've got a shop, you'll make sure there's no litter outside. You'll make sure it's clear what your shop sells, what it does, what opening hours. That's what the search real estate is now. And that search real estate will influence the information that LLMs have. So I think Mike King put it quite well. He said that the objective with SEO now is to saturate search results with your brand message so that you can optimize within LLMs, but also within search. And then you're looking at more direct traffic, right? People coming to you directly, which is frustrating because it's harder to track. Therefore, it's harder to increase sales in a strategic way. But we do know there's this direct correlation between occupying a lot of real estate, rich real estate, whether it be in LLMs or in Google, and increase in revenue and customers.
And you, Ross, what do you think?
Yeah, I would echo that. I think the way in which people have searched for things has fundamentally changed probably forever. When you look at the different places in which they're searching for things, the fragmentation of the immediate source has changed forever. Yes, the vast majority are still going to Google. I'm not one of those like ChatGPT truthers who's going to say, I think the death of Google is here. That's not what I would say. In fact, I would say, if anything, what we're going to continue to see is Google continue to be a steady source for discovery, to Lexi's point, and we're just going to start to see fragmentation where more and more people are using Amazon to identify what product they should search, and they're using queries that they would have used in Google when it comes to an e-commerce experience. Same thing is going to happen in B2B. Like maybe more people are going to use a channel like Reddit to get local search, or TikTok to get restaurant search, or Instagram. All of these different platforms all have a discovery function, which I think are going to influence the way that SEOs and marketers need to think. Fundamentally, when it comes to SEO and influencing the LLMs, the same principles that made SEO a very viable career and made SEO an opportunity for brands to drive revenue and traffic and growth still exists in this new world of LLMs. The same efforts that you would typically take where you're focused on experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness from an SEO lens can be applied to the typical generative engine optimization efforts that would be taking place to influence the LLM. So I think, if anything, change is here. There is a shift, but fundamentally, the main principles, the first mental models that a lot of the best SEOs had over the last few years are still going to be at the forefront of a lot of activities that need to be embraced by brands and individuals on a day-to-day basis.
I totally agree with you, Ross and Lexi. We, as marketers, are perceiving this change. In, let's say, reflecting on your daily work or your daily conversation with clients, how are you seeing business company taking conscience of this change?
On a day-to-day basis with us, we're in primarily B2B. We have seen a massive shift happen where more and more of the lead source, which is oftentimes the metric that we get measured on, is something other than Google. It's ChatGPT, it's Claude, it's Perplexity, it's Reddit, it's Slack, it's all of these different things. Now, when we see this, and even from a traffic lens, we're starting to see more and more sources from different channels. The diversification of sources for referral traffic has been on the rise. And because it's on the rise, so has been leads. And because of that, it makes it for an easier dialogue for us to have with executive teams around why this makes sense and why we should be investing and thinking differently. To Lexi's point around, like, how can you increase your brand mentions? This is one of the most beautiful things I believe that has ever happened in the industry, because I think we went way too far. I think the entire industry went way too far overthinking about backlinks and how we can get a DA47 to link to this page, a DA77 to link to this page. I think we went way too far, and we underestimated the power of brand and the role that it plays in both the SERP, but also in literal driving real business. I think now we're putting marketing back into content marketing, and we're starting to see marketers start to think like marketers again. And I think it's been long overdue. And our clients overall are responding quite positively to it.
I would agree. I'm seeing quite a positive response on our side. We primarily focus on emerging technology in B2B. And what we are seeing more of is this step away from this formulaic checklist for SEO and more of a natural who are our audience, how do we reach them, and what do they need to be reached with? So, with emerging technology, there's often new language around it, it's educating people and building trust. And we've moved from this era, I think, of attention-based economy to a trust-based economy, and certainly within emerging technology, that is true. And having rich search results, having discoverability so that someone can ask a question and find detailed answers and build that trust is becoming even more important. And we're actually seeing a lot of people asking us about that, especially when it comes to health tech. There are some great advances, but if someone doesn't know to search for it, they don't know what language to use, and then they don't trust it when they find it, they're not going to convert. So we're seeing that there is this sort of fragmentation of how people are discovering information and learning. And then it's about making sure that's available on all the platforms and leading back in. And honestly, it's quite exciting because you've got many things you can measure in that regard. What is the knowledge base on the different systems around a certain piece of technology or even an industry? And I think with this move to multimodal, we've had it in SEO before the LLMs, video content, sound content, it's actually more open, it's less discriminatory. If you are not a super fast reader or you get car sick or when you're reading, now there are videos, there are audios, and AI enables all of that to be done with content really well. On the flip side, some of the changes we're seeing are people who have decided to axe the whole marketing teams and automate everything. And that typically does not work out well. And you get brought in and asked, how do you fix it? And you're like, there's the fixing, and then there's what you do after. And it's interesting because, yes, it can be repaired, and there are things you can automate, but you get different results with automation. So we had one of our clients, we were split testing coding bots that would write their tweets based on their own content, their PR content, their articles, and the tweets that they wrote themselves. And the AI was writing tweets that performed higher, but they weren't performing higher with the people that client wanted to be seen, respected, and known amongst. And so we get this ultimate selection. If you want to be known by everyone, then there are certain bits of technology you can employ that will help you. But if you've got a very specific audience, we still need humans involved, and we need them to be very strategic. Yes, you might get graphs that go up and to the right, which we were all taught to love and aspire to, but which graphs? And we need to be more selective in how we isolate audiences and determine what performance looks like and what success is.
Yes, totally. It's not the amount of traffic, it's the quality of the traffic, which is a very old mantra. We always say SEO is there for improving the qualified traffic to improve conversion, leads, and whatsoever. And you said something interesting. So you were saying that your client, in this case, if he really wanted to target its main audience, he needed to come back to human in some sense. In this landscape where AI is becoming literally a wonderful utility for generating content of any kind, how much is becoming even more important the human factor in order to be a unique voice and not another voice which is making a karaoke of AI?
It's a real question. We ran an experiment the other week. So we're very good at reactive media requests. So we have a lot of press that contact us and we auto match them with keywords related to our clients so we can be super fast to help journalists with quotes. And I was looking at placement rates, and I was speaking to the team, and we started experimenting with putting the odd typo into our responses because we do it so fast and we're not using technology. We're working with humans and technology. It's different. And we noticed that placement rate went up. And it's because press are so paranoid. Paranoid's the wrong word, actually. Let me replace that. They're so aware that human content functions better for them that they get very nervous of getting PR content that is written by AI. And we have to go to quite great lengths to make sure that our content, even if it's not written by AI, doesn't get picked up by their software that double checks for this. And that was really interesting because, yeah, the placement rates went up with the odd typo here or there, or changing spacing, the sort of thing that AI would typically pick up and correct. And so there are certainly things changing on the content creation promotion side, and it's driven largely by the media, because the media have their own audiences. And I remember the beginning of my PR career, it was quite hard talking to press about SEO. They felt uncomfortable about it. And then we had, I think it was Panda. It's showing my age now. And suddenly my phone rang loads because people wanted SEO advice, press. And I was helping them. The firm I was with was helping them. But now, like, media have really got this nailed. They have been advancing. They lagged behind, I think, initially, but once they got hit with Panda, they got real good at understanding where they needed to employ tech and where they shouldn't. And so now we can look at what press are doing and get a really strong indication of what we as marketeers, what business owners, and what brands should be doing, because they're using technology in a really smart way. Yes, they're being told what to cover based on keyword search volume. It doesn't completely determine what they cover, but they're also looking at how humans are interacting with their content, what works best for them. Bloomberg's video series at the moment is exceptional, and a lot of it is educational. It's foundational, getting people to understand new sectors like AI or different types of applications for it and addressing the key questions, and it performs extremely highly for them. I'm sure Ross will have some great suggestions here as well.
Yeah, I would
I'm sure.
100% echo that on the content side. If you're producing blog content, if you're creating landing pages, email drip campaigns, content that goes into Reddit, social posts, etc., we believe still truly that it's less about the AI and more about the human who's managing it and controlling it. Like the power of a strong prompt combined with a subject matter expert is absolute gold. And the way that I would think about it is the same way that agencies would have traditionally worked with a partner. If a partner gives you a keyword that they want to go after and the agency goes out and they create a blog post that's targeting that keyword, the blog post typically doesn't just go live immediately. That blog post then needs to go back to the client to do a review and then make a few edits, ensure that brand voices are correct, make sure that the tone is there, all of those things, and then press publish. And I think with AI and content, no matter if we're talking about a case study, an ebook, or a in-depth research piece, when we are thinking about content today, the stories still need that second set of eyes from a human to make sure that it's great. And if you can have the fundamentals of good understanding of what good content is, it's educational, it's engaging, it's entertaining, or it's empowering. And then you wrap that around the fact that you're going to leverage AI to get to a first draft quicker, that you're going to use AI to improve a section faster, or you're going to take a piece that you were going to create and you're going to take it from a 9 to a 10 by leveraging AI to create a calculator that you can now embed into a WordPress site that is now going to be interactive. And now your experience for the reader and the user is now just a little bit more richer. That couldn't be done by someone who might not know how to code a few years ago. But because of AI, it's easier, I believe, to make excellent content because you now are empowering people who might not have had the ability to use data effectively, who could write code effectively, to now be able to do so and create more rich experiences with the content that they're developing at a scale and at a rate that has never been seen before.
Yeah, yes, and I want to just cite something personal that I do when it comes to. I'm not creating content, but usually I inform as an SEO what the content that the client should create. I work with different types of client, but there is one that in the B2B sector, really primary industry sector, that is giving me a lot of satisfaction because we individuated that we were small guys competing with really big brands that are substantially living on the shoulder of their brand reputation. So we consider that what we can do that these guys are not doing, as you were saying, was educational content. So we started to create educational content, and not only educational content about the things this company is building, but also case studies, which is the classic type of content that is usually neglected because people says, it's not ranking so well, but actually it's giving me and my client especially big satisfaction because they are written by the client and then reviewed by the engineer who work on the case study. So it's surely expertise and experience based. And because it's written naturally, even if we then also use AI for a few things when creating the content, especially in how to format it in terms of paragraph and so on, formally, not creatively. And we started to see that once, for instance, AI overview start to pop up really frequently in the search results, this client with this content was always cited. And we saw a correlation, as we were seeing in the beginning of our conversation, between these bigger brand visibility on SERPs, which wasn't generating traffic, with a bigger numbers of brand organic clicks from branded queries. So this is really something that it's really telling me that thinking well the content, considering also that kind of content we usually is considered not useful for traffic, actually is the best one for traffic and reputation. Lexi, as you were saying, your reputation is so important because if we are not upliving to the reputation we want to show, with the reputation we present in the online ecosystem, this connection is going to make potential clients escape. So yeah, I really love it. And then there is another thing that I don't know if you use it, but if you are not using it, I really like sometimes when I really struggle to find. I really think I'm coming from the television world before doing SEO substantially 1 century ago, and I was used to use lateral thinking for coming up with cycles about films, actors, or series, genres, something like this. And sometimes, obviously, you work with clients that, sincerely, you don't know anything. So what I like to do is, for instance, now that we have really advanced models like O1 of ChatGPT or of Gemini, or the Gemini 2 Pro for thinking, even Grok with Think is not bad. I really like to start a conversation with them. I present the situation, the problem, the context, and what I'm trying to achieve. And I start this conversation. And sometimes it's good. It's good. Obviously, I record everything, save everything in a document, and send it to my client, say, we are crazy, the AI, and especially me talking with the AI, or this is something that has a substance, but we can dig further. I don't know if you do it, but it's a really fascinating way of working and productive and fast.
Yeah. I think for every marketer, every entrepreneur, every creator, anyone in business today should be looking at ways that they can augment themselves across things even outside of marketing with AI tools. If you're using ChatGPT, if you're using Claude, Perplexity, if you're using any of these tools, they are a great way to augment yourself. I think I don't know if anyone here is a Marvel fan or familiar with the old Iron
Yes.
Man, like Jarvis kind of thing. But I really view these AI tools as being our equivalent of having a Jarvis. And it's, you can talk to it, you can use that conversation to facilitate a decision that you're making. The power of these tools is just absolutely wild, in my opinion. And I think everyone should be using it just the same way that you are.
I
Oh,
absolutely agree. Actually, Gianluca, I've loved seeing your AI images. They really lighten up my feed. And you inspired me, actually. I was watching what you were doing and the visual possibilities, because getting good visuals is always tough in press. And I started to think about what we could do in terms of could we do something like that with voice? And a lot of our clients are authors or they have a lot of digital content. And I was like, I wonder if I could make an AI version of a client so that we could answer journalists' questions and get a first draft over to them that they could edit that's already in their own language. Because answering questions for media is quite emotionally stressful and a blank page is so intimidating. And what I love with AI is it gets you past stage one. It gets you past that white blank page scenario. And I've been testing this at the moment. I built a DALI bot, so at the moment, I can chat with Dali. I sucked in a lot of his work, writing about him, so I can ask him questions just to see how accurate it would be. Can you forecast future things from these bots? So this works through Telegram at the moment. So I have a little Telegram chat with him going. And I asked him a question the other day, which is not one that a journalist asked me. I just wanted to see what he would say. But I asked him, do you think cats are smarter than humans? And I just pulled up the answer here. He said, cats possess a divine intelligence far beyond the human comprehension. Did you know Japanese scientists recently revived a cat brain after 10 days of hibernation? The feline mind exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. While we foolish humans are trapped in linear thought, my own cat demonstrates more genius in a single yawn than most philosophers achieve in a lifetime. And I just thought, okay, yeah, I'm not saying we will ever automate our clients' voices, but I will get my clients past stage one. If they've got a lot of online content and digital content, whether it's videos or books or writing, yeah, we're going to be able to clear that blank page and get them to the first thing that they can review. And the beauty is they get to critique their own thoughts. Isn't that wonderful? Which means every time we have a journalist inquiry, it's not them just giving their thoughts, they get to progress their thoughts one step further. Think what that means for the audience. They're getting a more advanced version of every expert, and if that's going into digital content on publications, that means we're advancing human knowledge faster. And I think we have to be careful with how we do this because truth is important. And I spend a lot of time looking at bias and AI and digital ethics. But this is a part of technology that I'm super excited about. Great, we should be better than we were yesterday. But it's all about our relationship with technology. And I don't think you can take the human out of that because there will always be a human relationship. And if you make it truly fully automated, you're removing that at its core. And I think that probably isn't good for us. But this first instance of allowing us to have a discussion with ourselves, how awesome is that?
Yeah, totally. And talking about the possibility that AI is giving to voice, sometimes we always say as a good practice, not only as something for branding, personal branding, but we always suggest that the stakeholders of a company we are working with for should be more present and vocal and active in order to talk with journalists. As you were saying, many are great entrepreneurs, but horrible in talking and discussing and every conversation. They are really, because maybe they are not used, maybe because they are shy, maybe because they don't have the skill. So AI is really giving us opportunity in the term of voice because you, as you were saying, I started to experiment, for instance, with the voice as being trained over the voice of my client CEO. And actually, what it does is writing something or reviewing something that we have script that we have created. And then we give it to the AI, which is creating which is instructed to talk as more naturally possible with his voice. So then there is also the magic of editing, and this is my many years in the audiovisual space that are coming, so I can say also, thankfully, how to edit something, how to improve something with traditional editing of audio. And this is coming out really interestingly because we have also to sometimes to remind this client that he did the podcast because it was fun, it's an anecdote. He was received a lot of compliments, and he wasn't remembering why he was receiving these compliments because actually he didn't do anything. He just reviewed this written script that we have created for him. So there are a lot of things that are going to give us AI also in the terms of video is giving. For instance, yesterday night I was watching like a bot for an hour and more videos of creators on YouTube that took historical photographs of the 19th century and use AI for recoloring them and animate them. And it was impressive, for instance, to see Oscar Wilde, taken from a classic Oscar Wilde portrait we all know, using that photo to make Oscar Wilde working in the London of the 19th century. It was impressive.
That is cool.
So using creativity, which is totally human, maybe spiced with some suggestion that also AI can give us, is the bot Dolly. Lexi, you call the bot Dolly because of a sheep? Or
No, I populated him with Salvador Dali's work.
Cool.
okay.
I love Dali. And so I populated it with all of his writing and things like that. The idea actually came from MIT Labs. I love going in there and seeing what they're working on. And I have a weird passion for law and the structure of law and what technology means for the future of law. And I saw MIT, they had a computational law department, and they had been sucking in a lot of information around different judges and modeling forward what a judge's ruling would be on a case based on their previous behavior. And I thought, oh, that's super interesting. I could do that for clients to prep them for interviews. Because quite a lot of the time, people will back out of an interview if they think it's going to be challenging or potentially a risk to their reputation. But we can minimize that risk by taking all the content of a particular TV show or publication and then sucking it in and saying, what would you ask someone in this scenario? What would be the hardest questions? And then you can give someone some time to think about it, come up with answers, and it makes prepping someone much better. And the computational law department at MIT is awesome. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, I highly recommend it. But the opportunities that are provided by us being able to anticipate questions, think about things beyond our own restricted bubble. And that means that we can take risks we couldn't take before because we can calculate risk in a completely different way. And that means there's more opportunities. And I think that's super exciting because we should be asking our world experts the hard questions. But I completely understand someone being nervous to go into certain interviews and things like that. But this allows us to prep people and make them more confident. And that's really what a PR agency should be aiming to do. It's not hiding. The history of SEO reputation management in some ways isn't treated kindly. It was about suppressing things. I think we're
Yes, in
moving
the
into a
second
new
page.
now we're moving into an era of we don't need to suppress, we can anticipate and respond effectively. That's far more honest. I've never been of the strain where we suppress anything. We're a reputation marketing firm, and if somebody wants us to suppress something, we don't do it. If they want to own their story, own their mistake, talk about what they've learned, how they're doing things better, what they wish they'd known before, that we will help people with. Because then if a journalist goes digging, because a journalist will always go beyond the second page, they see a whole narrative. They see that we learn from our mistakes. And the same with technology. Technology makes mistakes, humans make mistakes. It's how we respond and what we do next that's actually important. And this means that we have better opportunities than ever before to talk about that in a safe
Yeah.
way.
One of the things that I love what Lexi just described is the idea of preparing with AI, like the same way that you're describing preparing for an interview and having AI prompt you the tough questions so you can be ready for it. I think in for those listeners who might be wondering, okay, but how is this applicable to me? If you're thinking about even doing an interview for a job, train an AI, tell the AI all of the things about the company that you're applying for, talk about show them your resume, and then say, based off of this and the job description, ask me the questions that I might get stumbled upon, that I might stumble upon, so you can prepare. There's tools like HeyGen, which is like a AI synthetic video creation tool where you could even upload a synthetic version of yourself or someone else and have them do a mock interview for you, and it'd be an actual AI video conversation between you and them. And I think that is right now one of the low hanging fruit opportunities for everyone in the industry. Use AI to find ways to poke holes in your ideas, to improve, to prepare, to get better, to elevate. I think those are a great example of a use case for AI that's applicable to everyone across the board.
It's really a fascinating topic, a fascinating moment that we are living in this sense. But let's go a little bit practical now. So we have talked about AI, obviously, all the challenges that it's posing to us, but also all the opportunities that it's offering to us. Then we also talked before in the very beginning of how people search behavior
Mm,
or discover behavior more than search is really searching. For me, it's not really searching, maybe because I'm old enough to remember when navigating the web was defined as surfing the web. So you were literally clicking from link to, you started from a I don't know, which was a news, and ended your day from the same clicking, following clicking links in an archaeological
mm,
website, a website about archaeology. And so I think that substantially this kind of behavior is substantially similar. So people using dozens of platforms for discovering more things and for digging more about the things that really interest them or they really need. So this can somehow pose this fragmented landscape can be somehow be viewed as a problem when you have to create content. Ross, I see your book behind you, create and then repurpose everything. This is what I call the strategy of the
right.
pork. The pork, you
Yeah.
use everything.
Sure. 100%.
And so, what is the biggest challenge when you have to elaborate a content strategy or elaborate a
Yeah.
campaign, a reputation campaign, for instance, in order to understand what are the medium that I have to
Mm,
use, the correct medium that I have to use, what are the channels that I have to prioritize, and what are the other ones? How can I disarticulate my campaign so to obtain the biggest visibility? Because I don't know
right.
where
Right.
exactly this piece of content is going to have the biggest impact in my target
Yeah, I
audience.
think the key is that you start by doing what I would consider like channel user fit. So, channel user fit is you're looking to understand what channels your users, the audience, the customer, the people you're trying to connect with are spending time on. You might find that, let's pretend that you're going after CTOs, people who are very technical. In that scenario, you have to then ask yourself, like, where are they spending time to across their buyer's journey to get information? For some of them, they might be using search. They might go to search and they might type in a certain keyword or two, and then you want to do research to understand what content you need to create. Traditional search efforts, let's create landing pages, let's create blog posts that rank and show up for these phrases. But then as you go deeper, you might realize that these folks are also subscribed to certain newsletters. They're listening to certain podcasts. They're inside of different Slack communities. And they're also in this forum called Hacker News or a subreddit called Our Engineers. Based off of that understanding, you now know that your audience is also on these channels. So now what you have to do is look at each of those channels and start to figure out what type of content works on these channels and resonates with them. So for Hacker News, a community that is primarily engineers, developers in the startup world, there's a certain type of content that they want to see. Technical content, research, journals, papers. They might want to actually see source code, things like that. So you have to look at your original piece of content and the things that you've created in the past and ask yourself, how can we repackage that for this community? You also found that they listen to podcasts. So do you want to sponsor that podcast with a ad readout, or maybe you want to reach out and have someone who can support getting your leadership team on these different podcasts? Do you want to sponsor this newsletter? Maybe you want to just do outreach and try to get your articles seeded into it, a new journal or an asset that you've created. It all comes down to understanding that, one, you have to figure out where your people are. Two, let's figure out what our people want on these channels and how the format might change. And then finally, let's actively deploy and deliver a strategy that will allow our assets to be spread through these different mechanisms. In the book, Create Once, Distribute Forever, we literally dive into all of the different channels that you can tap into to distribute your content, whether it's email, whether it's Slack, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, Quora, you name it. And that is the essence of this philosophy of taking one piece of content that is, of course, really good and then dispersing that across the channels that make sense.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's so interesting. We used to live in an era where we had to pick which channel we were going to use because it's expensive in terms of resource, time to deploy across multiple channels. But I couldn't agree more with Russ, especially when it comes to things like Hacker News. If you create a piece of content for Hacker News, that's the sort of nucleus, that's your starting point. But then you can make a spidergram out of, okay, so how do I make this? How do I make it fit my grandmother? What would she want? What is the interpretation of that? And AI is so helpful for that. And it means that you're reaching audiences where they're at. And I also, Gianluca, remember the internet from when I was about 3 or 4, had a 286 computer. There wasn't search engines at the time, and you'd have to follow links. The beauty of having a nucleus for each piece of content, which is the most heavy, if you will, and then these spidergrams around, is that someone can find their way around the content. They can start off as someone at the beginning of a technology curve, not understanding anything, and come in. And then they can follow these bits of content around until they get back to the central, heavier part if they want to. I think that's great because it means that so many things become more inviting. It's more open. I was raised by hippies who always told me that the internet was a place of opportunity, a place where everyone had a chance, no matter whether you're a big or a small business. But that also means today, with the way technology is influencing the marketeers, is that every audience member has a chance, and an audience that wasn't accessible before can now access stuff by following these journeys of different types of content. And I think that is true to the spirit of what at least I was raised to believe the internet should and could be.
Yeah, and let's make it this a little bit, just maybe we are going to, we always say that people learn more from failure than from big successes. I know maybe it's not an easy question sometimes for certain person, but I'm sure you will accept it and like it. Ross, what was your biggest failure?
So over the years, I've started to build a reputation for the guy who understands Reddit. Like I've been talking about Reddit since probably 2016, 2017. But my biggest failure was my first experience on Reddit. I wrote a blog, rossimmonds.com, tons of blog posts have been created. And I was on a tear. I figured out LinkedIn. I was getting tons of engagement there. I figured out Twitter at the time and was getting tons of engagement there. SlideShare, which was really new, I was getting millions of views on my decks. I was like, okay, Reddit is the hardest channel. Marketers are afraid of it. I'm going to figure it out. So I took all of my blog content, I repurposed it a bit, and then I started submitting all of my links to Reddit. I was banned. I was blocked from 10 different subreddits. It was a massive failure. I got zero traffic. They deleted my account from the internet. They told me I was never allowed to come back. And in that moment, I could have quit. I could have said, I can't create like another account. In fact, I did create another account, but they connected to my IP. So my IP got banned as well. So then I had to get an entire new internet provider. But I came back and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this right. And I used that failure to better understand how Reddit actually works. And I analyzed it, I studied it, I reverse engineered different subreddits, And eventually I was able to crack the code. And now I've been on the front page tons of time through Reddit, both personal, professional, generated millions of dollars in deals on the back of this channel that still gives some people the hives. But it came from a moment of complete failure and being able to say, all right, that sucked, but I have two choices. I can give up and just stick to what I know, or I can try to figure this out and come back again, but this time with true understanding of the channel. And that's what I did.
And you, Lexi?
I really like that story, Russ, because I think no one really spoke to me when I was younger about that the road to success looks a lot like lots of failures, right? And we need to reframe it. It's only a failure if you don't learn and do something different.
Exactly.
I think I was very guilty at the beginning of my career because I was probably one of the most technical PRs out there because I could code from a young age. I loved the internet. And I always used to joke that I was the only PR in the village. I felt really lonely, whether I was in SEO or PR communities. That's changed now. But for a long time, I designed these awesome, super like mathematical, but also human strategies. And then clients wouldn't sign off on them. They wanted something more traditional that they were used to. Or they wouldn't want to engage with it because it was too much for them. So then I went to the other extreme. I was like, okay, I'll only design strategies that I know the client can do their part on. Because as a comms firm, there's only so much we can do without client input, right? We need their contribution. And both were arguably wrong. Bomb-ass strategy that is impossible for the client to play their role in is not a good strategy. But also limiting yourselves to just what they can viably do isn't correct. What I try to do more now is think about what would we do with unlimited resource and budget. Then let's do an audit of what is possible for them. And we actually do a test phase with clients now where we throw bunches of different stuff at them, see which ones they can execute quickly, easily, and we have that as a discussion. And then we find a place between the two, using a mixture of technology, using actual experience, because also what's easy for a client today may become harder as they're growing or raising. And so you have to be able to adapt. And I think this idea of a perfect strategy or a viable strategy was incorrect, but also a stable strategy. You don't want to be changing too often, but the idea that you can have a plan in January that's still going to be the correct plan in December, if you're doing your job, there should be so much change in that business that you need to revisit it. And I'm now learning to make sure that we put those 4-month check-ins. Where are we now? What's easy now? What's hard now? What's the next challenge? How have those goals shifted? And standing back and trying to find ways to make it viable, or accepting and doing that in conversation and dialogue that, hey, this is what we should be doing. It's not possible right now. So we're going to start here while we work together to figure out how we get to here. Because we do a disservice to people and our clients if we don't tell them what they should be doing just because we know they can't.
Love that.
And so I think that's my biggest learning at the moment. I'm not sure I call them failures. I certainly think it took me a while to figure out the learnings, though, and that's just part of making progress.
Totally. I would love to continue. Probably I would like to have this conversation going on and on, but we have times to respect, or the editors are going to kill me. And it's becoming a tradition to this as a final section of the conversation, asking you a few questions taken from the Proust questionnaire. They are really simple questions, but you should answer almost without thinking. And they are meant to help us, and especially all the viewers and the listener, to know you better as a person. You want to start?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Okay, first question. What is your favorite word?
Interesting.
Probably exciting.
Oh, knowing you, I think this is a state of feeling that you are the best. When you are the best, when you are excited about something. Knowing you, I know that this is the really fitting word for you. On the contrary, what is your least favorite word?
Can't.
No.
I don't believe it should exist.
I would say no.
Mhm. And talking about excitement, let's see, what turns you on?
Mm.
I like redefining what is possible. I think we really need to address the limiting beliefs we have. And to see a limiting belief is like trying to catch something invisible. But I've been training to be a pilot. I never thought
Mhm.
learning to fly would be possible. I also had to pick between doing an MBA part time or learning to fly. I have learned more about business and changed my business more fundamentally from learning to fly than I think I would have on an MBA. My whole business now runs on checklists with 3 different levels to stop failure at each different point, because that's how pilots operate. And every time I'm in the plane, you have to focus on what you're doing. And it means I have to leave work behind for an hour. The amount of times I land and I'm like, I have the answer to that. What got
Yeah,
me to the beginning of where I am, of my career, was working really damn hard. And then people started to talk about working smart. What does working smart mean? Working smart
mhm.
means trusting that your brain will figure stuff out, figuring out how to hack your brain, not just hack the internet, hack a problem. And so, yeah, flying, I, I'm very grateful to it. It's taught me so much, and it continuously reminds me that anything is possible.
Yes, this is very similar to what I've experienced with retaking my very old hobby. I was having it as when I was a
Mm.
kid already, which is painting. And really, when I'm painting my mini soldier, it's really about being creative, but with a method. So try to understand. Okay, I want to achieve this result, so I have to think how light is hitting this object, or how want the light, how imagine the light is hitting this object. So how I have to use glaze and how I have to blender the colors, the painting, what paint should I use, what pencil should I use, and so on. So I really think that sometimes these things that are maybe not so just
Mm.
hobby, or in your case, it's more than simply an hobby. Flying is also you really need it's a passion. Well, hobby, if really lived, is a passion,
Mhm.
are something that can really help you grow in every sense. And what about you, Ross?
Yeah, I get excited just being around like greatness. When I see someone who is great at what they do, they thrive, they strive to be great, they are always looking to improve. I would say even less so just have achieving the greatness, but that aspiration to achieve it gets me fired up. When I work with people who have ridiculously ambitious goals and then they pursue it and they're willing to make sacrifices to achieve it and they don't water themselves down around their commitment to greatness and what they want to do, I get super fired up being around those types of people. And it's not just business, right? Like
Cool.
it's the mom that wants to be the best mom ever. The dad that says, when I'm off, I want to be so present that my kids all speak highly of me at my funeral. Like those things are so cool to me. If you are just floating through life and you're just like going through it as a passenger, not really with intention of being great at the things that you do, that's meh to me. But if you're operating with intention, you're my kind of people. I love being around that.
Mm, cool. So, last question, which is can be a fun one. So, if you weren't working in what you are working, and you were asked to do something, what would be the profession that no, please don't make me do this work, the one that you really would hate to
Would
do?
hate to do.
Yeah.
Mm. I've had, I don't think, I've had some bad jobs. Like one of my worst jobs was in a bottle depot where I would count recycling bottles, like beer bottles and stuff like
Oh,
that, and sort them between green beer bottles, black, all of that stuff. And I remember throwing a can and a bunch of cigarettes coming out of the can and like just going all over my face and being covered in like moldy beer. And I was like, this job sucks. But again, to that point I just made, I made it fun by saying to myself, I'm going to be the fastest bottle counter that this business has ever seen. So even if I had a sucky job, I think I would enjoy it. Some would someday. It might suck at first, but I would find a way to just enjoy it. So the worst experience, the only thing that I could even come up with, which is just because I'm deep in it. But if I have to change diapers every day for the rest of my life, I would lose my mind. If I had, that would be the worst job. I am so tired of changing diapers. It's been 6 years. It's gross, but that'd be the only thing.
and you,
Russ,
Lexi?
Russ really had a similar answer to me. So I think one of the most greatly unappreciated philosophers of our lifetime is Mary
Oh, I love it.
Poppins. She has that beautiful phrase, in every chore that must be done, there is an element of fun. Find the fun, and it's a
Mm,
game. And I've done some pretty tough, whether physically demanding or repetitive, jobs that are hard for the
mm,
ego. When you graduate university and you've worked really hard and got all the work experience and you're sat there handing out flyers, you're like, oh gosh, that's not physically hard, it's ego hard, emotional hard. But the job I think I'd struggle most with is something where I got super cold.
mm.
I'm really not a good cold human. I would find a way to dress up and make myself into a Teletubby of like fur or whatever it might needed to be, like self-heating technology. But yeah, I don't do well cold. I worked as a chef for a long time, and in the mornings I had to go into the freezer and my hands would hurt. It was horrible. But I guess actually second to that, any job where I'd have to cause
Mm.
harm to others. I I'd rather take cold without the Teletubby suit for doing harm.
That's a great answer. So it was really a pleasure for me to spend this hour with you. I think we have shared really insightful things, good ideas, good reflection, a good way to look at the future of content, of what we can do and what we shouldn't do. And yes, it was really great. Thank you, Lexi. Thank you, Ross, for being our
Thanks for having
guest.
me.
Oh, thank you for having us. Speak to you
Take care.
soon.
Good to see you
Ciao,
both.
ciao.